General Keth Vorthak stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Zeltharian Empire. His dark scales bore scars from 40 years of war. His yellow eyes had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Today, those eyes carried something his fellow commanders had never seen before: fear. The chamber stretched high above him like a metal mountain. Hundreds of seats surrounded the central platform where Emperor Zephyros sat on his crystal throne. The Emperor's silver robes gleamed under the artificial stars that decorated the ceiling. Around him sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy: admirals, governors, and nobles who controlled the fate of billions. Vorthak held a datapad in his clawed hands. The information on it made his stomach turn. He had requested this meeting after returning from his mission to a small, unremarkable star system. The locals called it Sol. The third planet was called Earth. "General Vorthak," the Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have returned from your reconnaissance mission. What news do you bring us from this new world?" Vorthak stepped forward. His boots clicked on the polished floor. Every eye in the room watched him. He had conquered star systems for the Empire. He had broken the will of proud species. But this was different. "Your Imperial Majesty," Vorthak began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil, "I have observed the species called humans. They inhabit the third planet of the Sol system." Admiral Nixara leaned forward in her seat. Her blue skin reflected the chamber's lights. "What are their defenses like, General? How quickly can we add their world to our empire?" Vorthak's jaw tightened. "That is exactly what I came here to discuss. Your Majesty, I strongly recommend we avoid all contact with this species." A murmur ran through the chamber. Several nobles laughed. Emperor Zephyros raised one eyebrow, a gesture that had preceded the destruction of many worlds. "Avoid contact?" the Emperor asked. "General, in your 40 years of service, have you ever recommended avoiding conquest?" "No, Your Majesty. Never." "Then explain yourself." Vorthak activated his datapad. Holographic images appeared above the chamber, images of Earth and its people. "The humans appear primitive by our standards. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their weapons are crude. Their ships barely reach their own moon. Then why do you fear them?" Admiral Nixara's voice dripped with contempt. Vorthak's eyes flashed. "Because I watched them, Admiral. I studied them for 3 months. And what I saw—" He paused, searching for words. "They are not like any species we have conquered." The Emperor leaned forward. "Continue." "While I was there, a natural disaster struck one of their cities. An earthquake, they called it. Buildings collapsed. Thousands were trapped." Vorthak's voice grew quieter. "I expected panic. I expected them to flee and save themselves as most species do." "And did they?" "No, Your Majesty. They ran toward the danger. Ordinary citizens with no training or equipment pulled survivors from collapsed buildings. They formed rescue teams within minutes. I watched a female human, small, barely half the size of our smallest soldier, crawl into a burning structure to save a child that was not even her own." "Admirable," the Emperor said dismissively, "but irrelevant." "Is it?" Vorthak challenged, forgetting protocol. "I watched their military as well. During training exercises, I expected to see standard tactics, formation fighting, chain of command, predictable strategies." He shook his head. "Instead, I saw chaos that somehow worked. Groups of soldiers would split up, regroup, adapt their plans in seconds. When one plan failed, they immediately tried something completely different." "Primitive improvisation," Admiral Nixara scoffed. "No," Vorthak said firmly. "I have fought improvisation before. This was different. It was like watching water flow around rocks, constant adaptation without breaking." The Emperor's expression grew cold. "General, you speak of this species as if they pose a threat to the mighty Zeltharian Empire. They have no starships, no energy weapons. How could they possibly threaten us? Vorthak took a deep breath. Your Majesty, in all our conquests, we have faced species that fought for territory, for resources, for survival. The humans fight for ideas. I intercepted their communications during conflicts. They speak of freedom, of protecting the innocent, of dying for principles that have no physical form. Meaningless words, the Emperor said. Are they? Vorthak pulled up another image. This is Commander Kim Soo-jin, a human diplomat I observed. When her government discussed surrendering to avoid casualties, she convinced them to fight. Not for land or wealth, but because, as she said, some things are worth more than life itself. The chamber fell silent. Emperor Zephyros studied the image of the small human female. She looks fragile. She convinced an entire planet to potentially die rather than live without freedom. Your Majesty, we have conquered hundreds of worlds, but we have never faced a species that values abstract concepts over survival itself. Admiral Nixara stood up. General Vorthak, with respect, you sound like a coward. These humans are a primitive species with valuable resources. Their planet has rare minerals, abundant water, and a perfect climate. We could relocate millions of our citizens there. And what happens when they resist? We crush them, as we have crushed all others. Vorthak's voice rose. Admiral, these beings do not break. I watched their history records. They have fought wars lasting decades over ideas. They have rebuilt their civilizations from ashes and fought again. They lose battles and call it victory because they held to their principles. Emperor Zephyros had heard enough. General Vorthak, your concerns are noted. However, the Empire requires expansion. The Sol System's resources are too valuable to ignore. He looked around the chamber. All in favor of beginning conquest preparations for the Sol System? Hundreds of hands rose. Only Vorthak's remained at his side. The motion passes, the Emperor declared. Admiral Nixara, you will lead the conquest fleet. General Vorthak, you are relieved of command. You will accompany the fleet as an observer. Vorthak felt his heart sink. Your Majesty, please reconsider. These humans are not like other species. They will not surrender, they will not break, and they learn faster than any species I have ever encountered. Enough, the Emperor's voice thundered. The decision is made. Prepare the fleets. As the council dispersed, Vorthak remained standing in the center of the chamber. Around him, admirals discussed invasion plans and resource allocation. None of them understood what was coming. None of them had seen the look in human eyes when they faced impossible odds. Vorthak had served the Empire faithfully for 4 decades. He had believed in its power, its righteousness, its destiny to rule the galaxy. But standing in that chamber, listening to plans to attack Earth, he felt something he had never experienced before. He felt ashamed. 6 months had passed since the council meeting. The Zeltharian war fleet hung in space like deadly metal clouds at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Nixara commanded from the flagship Devastator, a massive ship that could destroy entire cities with a single blast. On Earth, every nation had put aside their differences. For the first time in human history, the entire planet worked as one. Military bases buzzed with activity. Scientists worked around the clock. Ordinary people prepared for the unthinkable, war with aliens. Captain Lee Min-jun stood on the bridge of the human defense ship Guardian. Through the viewing screen, he could see the alien fleet in the distance. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. The enemy ships were enormous, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. Captain, his communication officer called, "We're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. Put it on screen." The image flickered, then cleared. A tall, reptilian figure appeared. His skin was dark green with silver markings. When he spoke, translation software converted his words to Korean, then English. I am Fleet Commander Zoreth of the Zeltharian Empire. You will identify your leaders and prepare for immediate surrender. Lee Min-jun stepped forward. I am Captain Lee Min-jun of the United Earth Defense Force. We request that you leave our system peacefully. Zoreth's expression showed confusion, then amusement. You request? Small human, you do not understand your situation. We are the Zeltharian Empire. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your primitive species will submit or be destroyed. We understand perfectly, Lee replied calmly. You're invaders, and we're asking you to leave. If you refuse, we'll make you leave. Behind Zoreth, other alien officers laughed. The sound was harsh and grating. You will make us leave? Zoreth's voice rose. Look around you, human. Count our ships. Each one carries enough firepower to level one of your cities. We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. Then you've never fought humans before. The transmission ended. Zoreth stared at the blank screen, confused. In his experience, primitive species either begged for mercy or attacked in blind rage. This calm defiance was something new. On another ship in the alien fleet, General Vorthak watched the exchange. He was officially an observer, stripped of command and authority. But his eyes saw what others missed. The human captain had not shown fear or anger. Instead, he had shown something far more dangerous: confidence. On Earth, Commander Kim Soo-jin worked in the underground command center in Geneva. Banks of computers showed the positions of alien and human forces. She had been promoted from diplomat to military coordinator. Her job was to organize Earth's defense across all nations and military branches. Commander, Dr. Sarah Chen approached her station. The xenobiologist carried a tablet full of data. We've analyzed the alien ship designs. Their technology is definitely superior, but they're following very rigid patterns. What do you mean? Their ships move in perfect formations. Their communication patterns are highly structured. Everything suggests they follow strict military doctrine. Dr. Chen pulled up ship diagrams. But look at their weapon placements. They're designed for fighting enemies who follow similar doctrines. Kim studied the data. They expect us to fight like they do. Exactly. Traditional fleet battles, formation against formation, following predictable rules of engagement. But we don't know their rules, Kim said slowly. And we don't have to follow them. The first skirmish came 2 days later. A small group of Zeltharian scout ships approached Earth's moon, expecting to overwhelm the human outpost there. They found 3 human ships waiting, tiny compared to the alien vessels. The Zeltharians opened fire with overwhelming force. The human ships scattered in different directions, avoiding the attack completely. Then they did something unexpected. They flew directly at the alien ships. What are they doing? Zoreth demanded from his command ship. Are they attempting suicide attacks? His tactical officer studied the displays. Unknown, sir. Their ships appear to be equipped with some kind of mining equipment. The human ships reached the alien vessels and attached themselves to their hulls like metal parasites. Suddenly, the Zeltharian ships lost power. Their weapons stopped working. Their shields failed. Report! Zoreth shouted. Sir, the humans have somehow disrupted our power systems. They're using some kind of electromagnetic pulse device. Captain Lee Min-jun's voice crackled over the communication system. Zeltharian ships, this is Captain Lee. Your vessels have been disabled but not destroyed. Evacuate to your escape pods and we'll let you return to your fleet. Zoreth was speechless. The humans had defeated superior ships using tactics he had never seen. They had shown mercy to defeated enemies, and they had done it with mining equipment modified for war. The surviving alien crews were picked up by their fleet. When they reported what had happened, most of the Zeltharian officers refused to believe it. Impossible, Admiral Nixara declared. Our ships have the most advanced shielding in the galaxy. The humans bypassed our shields entirely, the scout captain reported. They attached devices directly to our hulls. Our sensors never detected them approaching because they used our own engine emissions to hide their ships. General Vorthak listened to the reports with growing dread. Everything was happening exactly as he had feared. The humans were not fighting by any rules the Empire understood. 3 weeks later, the real fighting began. Admiral Nixara ordered a full assault on Earth's orbital defenses. 100 Zeltharian ships moved toward the planet in perfect formation. They met unexpected resistance. Human ships appeared from behind asteroids, from inside debris clouds, from directions the aliens had not thought to guard. The humans used every trick they could think of, hiding ships inside cargo containers, disguising weapons as communications equipment, launching attacks from multiple directions at once. But it was not just their tactics that confused the Zeltharians, it was their attitude. During one battle, a damaged human ship was drifting helplessly near a Zeltharian cruiser. Standard military doctrine called for the aliens to destroy it immediately. Instead, they received a transmission from the human ship. Zeltharian vessel. This is Lieutenant Park Sung-ho. Our ship is disabled, but we have wounded aliens aboard from your damaged scout ship. We're transmitting their location so you can pick them up. The Zeltharian captain stared at his screen. They rescued our people? Yes, sir. During the battle, when our scout ship was destroyed, the humans pulled the survivors from space. Why would they save their enemies? The question had no answer that made sense to Zeltharian military thinking. General Vorthak knew the answer. He had tried to warn them. Humans did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought for principles that made no sense to a species that valued only strength and order. As reports of strange human behavior reached Admiral Nixara, she grew more frustrated. How do we defeat an enemy that saves our wounded, shows mercy to prisoners, and fights with equipment meant for mining and construction? Fleet Commander Zoreth suggested increasing their attacks. We'll overwhelm them with superior firepower. But General Vorthak knew better. The humans were learning. Every battle taught them something new about Zeltharian technology and tactics, and they adapted faster than any species he had ever encountered. The war had begun, and already the mighty Zeltharian Empire was discovering that some victories came with a price too high to pay. Standing on the observation deck of Admiral Nixara's flagship, Vorthak watched human ships dart between the massive alien vessels like insects attacking giants. But these insects had stings, and they were learning where the giants were most vulnerable. He had warned them. Now it was too late to turn back. The war had been raging for 2 months. What began as a simple conquest had turned into something Fleet Commander Zoreth could not understand. The humans refused to fight properly. They refused to lose properly. Most frustrating of all, they refused to surrender properly. Captain Lee Min-jun piloted his ship through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Behind him, 3 massive Zeltharian cruisers fired energy beams that could melt mountains. The beams missed by centimeters as Lee guided his ship between floating rocks. "Captain," his engineer called over the communication system, "we've got 15 civilian transports in the convoy. If those cruisers catch us, they'll destroy every ship." Lee checked his tactical display. The transports carried families evacuating from the Mars colony, children, elderly people, civilians who had never wanted to fight in any war. Now they were running for their lives. "All transport ships, listen carefully," Lee spoke into his microphone. "Continue on course to the rendezvous point. We'll handle our followers." "Sir," his weapons officer said, "we can't fight 3 cruisers with 1 ship." "We're not going to fight them," Lee replied with a grin. "We're going to teach them a lesson." Lee turned his ship toward the largest asteroid in the belt. It was nearly 1 kilometer wide, spinning slowly in space. As the Zeltharian ships followed, Lee flew his ship into a narrow canyon that cut across the asteroid's surface. The alien ships were too large to follow, but their weapons were not. Energy beams lanced into the canyon, superheating the rock walls. Lee waited until the beams stopped, then activated his ship's mining lasers. The intense heat from the alien weapons had made the rock unstable. Lee's lasers provided just enough additional energy to cause a massive rock slide. Millions of tons of debris exploded outward from the asteroid. The Zeltharian ships found themselves surrounded by a cloud of high-velocity rocks. Their shields held, but they were effectively blind. "Transport convoy, this is Captain Lee. You're clear to proceed. Our friends are going to be busy for a while." On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen worked in her laboratory with captured Zeltharian technology. Human engineers had managed to salvage equipment from disabled alien ships. What they discovered changed everything. "Commander Kim," Dr. Chen called excitedly as she entered the command center. "We've had a breakthrough." Kim Soo-jin looked up from the tactical displays she had been studying. "What kind of breakthrough?" "The Zeltharian energy systems are incredibly advanced, but they have a weakness. They rely on centralized control. Every ship has a main computer that manages all systems, weapons, shields, life support, everything. And if we can overload that central computer, the entire ship becomes helpless. I've developed a computer virus that can be transmitted through their own communication signals." Kim studied the data on Dr. Chen's tablet. "You mean we can disable their ships without firing a shot?" "Better than that. The virus copies itself to other ships through their fleet communication network. One infected ship can spread the virus to dozens of others." This information reached Captain Lee during his next mission. He was leading a strike force against a Zeltharian supply depot near Jupiter. Instead of using conventional weapons, Lee's ships transmitted Dr. Chen's virus to the alien vessels. The results were immediate and devastating. Zeltharian ships began losing power throughout the fleet. Their weapons stopped working. Their communication systems failed. Several ships lost life support and had to evacuate their crews. But then something happened that surprised both sides. As Zeltharian escape pods drifted in space, human ships moved to rescue them. Captain Lee personally oversaw the evacuation of alien survivors. "Captain Lee," the Zeltharian supply commander spoke through the translation system as he was brought aboard Lee's ship. "Why do you save us? We are your enemies." Lee considered the question. "Because you're people. Being enemies doesn't mean we have to let you die." The alien officer stared at him with large, confused eyes. "This is not how war works." Maybe that's the problem. Word of human mercy spread through the Zeltharian fleet. Soldiers began questioning their orders. Some refused to attack civilian targets. Others started wondering why they were fighting beings who showed such strange kindness to defeated enemies. General Vorthak received a secret message on his private communication device. The message was from human intelligence requesting a private meeting. Vorthak knew he was taking a terrible risk, but his curiosity overcame his caution. The meeting took place on a small moon orbiting Saturn. Vorthak arrived alone in a shuttle. Commander Kim Soo-jin waited for him in a human diplomatic vessel. "General Vorthak," Kim said as they met in the neutral zone between their ships, "thank you for coming." "Why did you want to meet with me?" "Because you tried to warn your people about us. We've been monitoring Zeltharian communications. We know you opposed this war." Vorthak's expression was grim. "I served my empire loyally for 40 years. I believed we brought order to chaos, civilization to primitive worlds. But watching this war..." He paused. "You have shown me something I did not expect to see." "What's that?" "That strength without mercy is not strength at all. It is simply brutality." Kim nodded. "General, we don't want to destroy your people. We just want you to leave us alone." "That will not happen. Emperor Zephyros has committed too much to this conquest. To retreat now would show weakness. He will send more ships, more soldiers. He will sacrifice every ship in the fleet rather than admit defeat. Then help us end this quickly. Help us minimize the casualties on both sides. Vorthak looked at the small human woman. She was asking him to betray everything he had ever believed in, but those beliefs had brought death and suffering to countless worlds. What do you propose? Your fleet has a weakness. All orders come from Admiral Nixara's flagship. If we could disable that ship, the rest of the fleet would be paralyzed. You would need the ship's command codes, and you would need to know about the security systems that protect the bridge. Kim waited silently. After a long moment, Vorthak made his decision. The command codes change every day at 600 hours ship time. There is a 30-second window during the changeover when all systems are vulnerable. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Vorthak said sadly. What I have just done makes me a traitor to my own species. No, Kim replied. What you've just done makes you something far more important. It makes you someone who chooses conscience over orders. As their ships parted, Vorthak felt the weight of his decision. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. But for the first time in months, he felt hope that the killing might end soon. On the flagship Devastator, Admiral Nixara received reports of continuing defeats. Human tactics grew more sophisticated every day. Their technology improved at an impossible rate. Most disturbing of all, her own soldiers were beginning to question their mission. Admiral, Fleet Commander Zoreth reported, we've lost another supply convoy. The humans are not just defeating our ships, they're rescuing our crews and sending them back to us with messages. What kind of messages? Requests for peace negotiations. Offers to treat prisoners according to something they call the Geneva Convention. And Zoreth hesitated. And what? Medical supplies for our wounded. Admiral Nixara stared at him. They're giving us medical supplies? Yes, Admiral. Our doctors say the human medicines are actually superior to our own for treating several types of injuries. Nixara felt her certainty beginning to crack. Nothing about this war made sense. The Empire was supposed to be superior in every way, but these primitive humans were outfighting, outthinking, and outcompassioning the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Double our attacks, she ordered. If mercy is their weakness, we'll use it against them. But General Vorthak, listening to the conversation, knew better. Human mercy was not their weakness. It was their greatest strength. And it was slowly destroying the Zeltharian Empire from within. Emperor Zephyros stood before the massive viewing screen in his throne room. The image showed the Sol system, where his mighty fleet was supposed to have achieved easy victory months ago. Instead, the reports that reached him daily spoke of defeats, confusion, and something he had never encountered in his long reign: mercy from the enemy. Summon Admiral Dracoth, he commanded his aide. Ready the Imperial Guard fleet. The aide's eyes widened. Your Majesty, the Imperial Guard has not been deployed in over a century. Then it is time they remembered their purpose. 500 light-years away, Captain Lee Min-jun floated in the wreckage of his ship. The Guardian had been destroyed during a desperate battle to protect a human research station. Lee and his crew had escaped in life pods, but they were drifting in space with limited oxygen. A shadow passed over them. Lee looked up to see a massive Zeltharian rescue ship approaching. This was unexpected. The aliens usually ignored human survivors. Captain Lee, a familiar voice spoke through the communication system. This is General Vorthak. Prepare for immediate rescue. General Vorthak? But you're a traitor to my species, according to my former comrades, but a friend to yours, I hope. Lee and his crew were brought aboard the alien ship. They found it filled with humans, pilots, soldiers, and civilians that Vorthak had secretly rescued from destroyed ships and stations. General, Lee said as they met in the ship's medical bay, why are you doing this? Vorthak's expression was sad but determined. "Because I have learned something in my 40 years of service. True strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the choice to preserve. The Empire will consider you a traitor." "The Empire already considers me a traitor. I have been passing information to your forces for weeks." Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from the medical equipment she was examining. "Even on an enemy ship." She couldn't help studying alien technology. "General, this medical equipment is amazing. It could save thousands of human lives." "Take whatever you need," Vorthak replied. "Knowledge should heal, not harm." On Earth, Commander Kim Soo-jin received intelligence reports that made her blood run cold. The Empire was sending reinforcements, not just more ships, but the personal fleet of Emperor Zephyros himself. "How many ships?" she asked her intelligence officer. "Over 2,000, Commander, including the Emperor's flagship, the Annihilator. It's the largest warship ever built." Kim studied the tactical display. The human fleet had perhaps 300 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels. They had been holding their own against Admiral Nixara's forces through superior tactics and adaptability. But this was different. This was the full might of a galactic empire. "Send a message to all human commanders," Kim ordered. "Emergency council meeting in 1 hour." The meeting took place via secure holographic communication. Military leaders from every nation on Earth appeared in the underground command center. Captain Lee, recently rescued and promoted to admiral, participated from General Vorthak's ship. "The situation is simple," Kim began. "We're about to face odds of 7-1. The enemy's reinforcements include ships designed specifically for planetary destruction." "What are our options?" asked Admiral Torres from the European Defense Force. "We can evacuate Earth and try to rebuild somewhere else," suggested Admiral Nakamura from the Asian Alliance. "Save as many people as possible and continue the fight from hidden bases." "No," Admiral Lee's voice was firm. "We don't run. If we run now, the Empire will hunt down every human in the galaxy. This ends here, one way or another." Dr. Chen spoke from her research station on Luna. "I have an idea, but it's extremely risky. We've been studying Zeltharian psychology and social structure. Their entire civilization is built on absolute obedience to authority. If we could somehow prove that their emperor is wrong—" "How do we prove an emperor wrong?" Kim asked. "By showing his people something they've never seen before. A species that fights not for conquest, but for the right of all beings to be free." Kim understood immediately. "You mean we broadcast our fight to their entire empire?" "Exactly. Let every Zeltharian world see how their primitive enemies treat prisoners. Let them see humans dying to protect alien civilians. Let them see what their empire really looks like from the outside." The plan required cooperation from General Vorthak. He would need to secretly modify the Empire's communication network to allow human transmissions to reach Zeltharian worlds. "It can be done," Vorthak confirmed. "But the moment I begin the modifications, I will be detected. My ship will be destroyed." "We'll protect you," Admiral Lee promised. 3 days later, the Imperial Guard fleet arrived. Emperor Zephyros himself stood on the bridge of the Annihilator, watching the small human fleet take defensive positions around Earth. "Pathetic," he sneered. "They think their tiny ships can stand against the might of the Imperial Guard." Admiral Nixara, who had been summoned to the Emperor's ship, felt nervous. "Your Majesty, these humans fight differently than any enemy we have faced. They don't follow standard military doctrine. Then we will teach them the proper way to die." The battle began at dawn, Earth time. 2,000 Zeltharian warships advanced on the human fleet in perfect formation. The humans scattered immediately, their ships darting in all directions like birds fleeing a storm. But as the battle progressed, something unexpected happened. Human ships began coordinating their attacks in ways that defied military logic. Civilian ships worked alongside military vessels. Cargo haulers launched fighters. Even medical ships participated, not in combat, but in rescuing survivors from both sides. All of this was being broadcast across the Zeltharian Empire. On 100 worlds, alien civilians watched as their mighty fleet fought beings who saved enemy wounded while under fire. On the planet, Zeltharia Prime, factory worker Grix paused in his duties to watch the battle feed. He saw a small human medical ship fly directly into a firefight to rescue Zeltharian pilots from a damaged fighter. The human ship was destroyed in the process, but not before evacuating the alien crew. "Why would they do that?" Grix asked his supervisor. "Those were our people." The supervisor had no answer. Similar scenes played out across the Empire. Zeltharian citizens watched humans sacrifice themselves to save alien lives. They saw human commanders refuse to fire on damaged enemy ships. They witnessed something their empire had never shown them: mercy in the midst of war. Emperor Zephyros realized what was happening too late to stop it. "Cut the transmissions," he roared. "We cannot, Your Majesty," his communication officer reported. "Someone has modified our entire communication network. The signal is coming from General Vorthak's ship." The Emperor's expression turned deadly. "Destroy that ship immediately." A dozen Imperial Guard cruisers turned their weapons on Vorthak's vessel, but human ships moved to protect it. Admiral Lee led a desperate charge that cost dozens of human vessels, but kept Vorthak alive long enough to complete his mission. As Vorthak's ship finally exploded under concentrated fire, his last transmission reached every corner of the Zeltharian Empire. "Citizens of Zeltharia, I am General Keth Vorthak. For 40 years I served our empire believing we brought order to the galaxy. Today I learned the truth. True order comes not from fear, but from choice. True strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to preserve. The beings we fight are not primitive. They are what we could become if we chose compassion over conquest." The transmission ended, but its effects had only begun. Across the Empire, Zeltharian soldiers began laying down their weapons. Entire ships refused orders to fire on human vessels. Admiral Nixara watched in horror as her own fleet began to disintegrate around her. "Your Majesty," she reported to the Emperor, "we are experiencing massive defections. Our soldiers are refusing to fight." Emperor Zephyros stared at the tactical display. His mighty empire was crumbling, not because of superior firepower, but because his people had seen something they had never imagined possible: an enemy that fought with honor. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and for the first time in his life, Emperor Zephyros felt afraid. The Zeltharian Empire was tearing itself apart from within. On dozens of worlds, civilian populations demanded answers from their leaders. Why were they fighting beings who showed such mercy? Why had no one told them that their enemies saved wounded soldiers and protected civilians? Emperor Zephyros stood alone on the bridge of the Annihilator. Around him, his officers worked frantically to maintain control of a fleet that was rapidly falling apart. Ships were surrendering or simply refusing to fight. Some had even turned their weapons against other Imperial vessels to protect human ships. "Your Majesty," Admiral Nixara approached carefully, "we have reports of open rebellion on 17 worlds. The Kepler system has declared independence. The mining colonies in the Vega sector are refusing to send resources. How many ships do we have left under our direct control?" "Perhaps 300, Your Majesty. The rest have either defected, surrendered, or are refusing orders." Zephyros felt the foundation of his empire crumbling beneath his feet. In his mind, he could still hear General Vorthak's final words echoing across the galaxy. "True strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to preserve." "Prepare my personal guard," he commanded. "We will board the human command ship and end this personally." "Your Majesty, that would be extremely dangerous." Dangerous? Zephyros laughed bitterly. Admiral, I am watching my empire collapse because a handful of primitive humans showed mercy to their enemies. How much more dangerous could it possibly become? On the human command ship Defiant, Admiral Lee Min-jun received reports from across the solar system. The Zeltharian fleet was in chaos. Alien ships were requesting permission to surrender. Some were actually offering to fight alongside human forces. Admiral, Commander Kim Soo-jin approached his station. We're receiving a transmission from the Emperor's flagship. Put it through. Emperor Zephyros appeared on the main screen. His silver robes were rumpled, his expression haggard. Behind him, smoke drifted from damaged equipment. Admiral Lee, the Emperor said, his voice hollow, I propose a final meeting. You and your senior officers, myself and my remaining loyal guards. Let us end this war face to face. Lee exchanged glances with Kim and Dr. Chen. What are the terms? No terms. No conditions. Simply two leaders meeting to decide the fate of their peoples. Very well, but the meeting takes place on neutral ground. 6 hours later, representatives from both sides met on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The location was a research station that had been abandoned when the war began. Human and Zeltharian ships hung in space nearby, weapons powered down but ready. Emperor Zephyros entered the station's main laboratory, accompanied by 4 guards. He was tall even for his species, nearly 3 meters, with elaborate silver markings covering his dark scales. Despite his imposing presence, his eyes showed the weariness of a ruler who had lost everything. Admiral Lee, Commander Kim, and Dr. Chen waited for him. The contrast was striking. The massive alien emperor and the 3 humans who had somehow brought down a galactic empire. So, Zephyros said, looking around the small room, these are the beings who have destroyed my civilization. We never wanted to destroy anything, Kim replied. We just wanted to be left alone. Left alone. The emperor repeated the words as if they were foreign concepts. In my 1,000 years of rule, no species has ever asked simply to be left alone. They have begged for mercy, offered tribute, surrendered unconditionally, but none have ever requested independence. Dr. Chen spoke up. Your Majesty, with respect, perhaps that's because no one ever had a choice before. Choice. Another foreign concept. Admiral Lee, explain to me how your forces have defeated the most powerful military in the galaxy. Lee considered his words carefully. We didn't defeat your military, Emperor. We offered your soldiers something they had never been given before, a reason to choose. Choose what? Choose to fight for something greater than themselves. Your soldiers joined us not because we conquered them, but because they saw us treating our enemies with dignity. They saw us risking our lives to save Zeltharian civilians. They realized that strength isn't about forcing others to obey. It's about inspiring them to believe. Emperor Zephyros was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. General Vorthak tried to warn me about your species. He said you fight for ideas rather than territory. He was right. But ideas are not real. They cannot be touched or measured or controlled. Kim stepped forward. Your Majesty, can you touch honor? Can you measure courage? Can you control love? Ideas are the most real things in the universe because they live in every thinking being. And what idea do you fight for? Freedom, Lee said simply. The right of every species to choose their own path. Even species that have opposed you, especially those. Dr. Chen activated a tablet, showing images from across the galaxy. Your Majesty, look what's happening on your worlds. Your people aren't rebelling because they hate you. They're rebelling because they've seen an alternative to empire. They've seen cooperation instead of conquest. The images showed Zeltharian worlds where civilians were working with former subject species. On the mining world of Kepler 442, Zeltharians and the indigenous crystal-based life forms were building new cities together. In the Vega sector, 5 different species were forming an alliance based on mutual trade and protection. "You have given them hope," Zephyros said quietly. "And hope is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy for an emperor." "It doesn't have to be," Kim said. "You could be part of building something better." "You would trust me, after everything I have done?" "People can change," Lee replied. "General Vorthak proved that. Your own soldiers proved that when they chose to stop fighting. You can prove it too." Emperor Zephyros walked to the laboratory's viewing window. Outside, he could see ships from a dozen different species, all working together to repair damage from the war. Human medical ships were treating Zeltharian wounded. Alien engineers were helping to rebuild human stations. "If I surrender," he asked, "what becomes of my people?" "They become free," Dr. Chen answered. "Free to choose their own leaders, their own alliances, their own future." "And if I refuse?" "Then this war continues until every ship in your fleet is destroyed or defected," Lee said honestly. "But, Your Majesty, that's not what any of us want." Zephyros turned back to face the humans. For the first time in 1,000 years of rule, he was not the most powerful being in the room. These small creatures had shown him something he had never imagined: power willingly shared, strength used to protect rather than conquer. Victory achieved through inspiration rather than fear. "I have one condition," he said finally. "What is it?" "I want to address the galaxy personally. I want to tell them that the Zeltharian Empire is dissolved and that our worlds are free to choose their own paths." Kim smiled. "That can be arranged." The transmission went out across the galaxy that same day. Emperor Zephyros, standing alongside human leaders, formally dissolved the empire that had ruled for 10,000 years. He announced the formation of a new alliance, the Galactic Cooperation Council, where every species would have an equal voice. "Citizens of the galaxy," his final imperial proclamation declared, "today we begin a new age, an age where strength is measured not by what we can destroy, but by what we can build together." 6 months later, Admiral Lee stood on the observation deck of the new council headquarters, a space station built jointly by dozens of species. Former enemies worked side by side, sharing technology and knowledge freely. Commander Kim joined him at the viewing port. "Any regrets about not destroying the Empire completely?" "None," Lee replied. "Destroying something is easy. Building something better is the real challenge." Through the window, they watched as ships from across the galaxy arrived for the Council's first General Assembly. Zeltharian vessels flew alongside human ships, former slaves worked with former masters, and species that had been enemies for millennia shook hands in the station's corridors. Dr. Chen's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, Commander, you might want to see this. We just received a transmission from the Andromeda Galaxy. They're asking about our peaceful alliance and wondering if they can join." Lee and Kim exchanged glances, then began to laugh. "Well," Kim said, "I suppose we'll need a bigger station." In his new office as Director of Interspecies Relations, former Emperor Zephyros reviewed applications from dozens of worlds requesting to join the Council. His door chimed, and General Vorthak's replacement, a young Zeltharian officer named Crix, entered with a report. "Director," Crix said, "the former Imperial Guard has formally requested assignment as Council peacekeepers. They want to protect other species from the kind of oppression they once enforced." Zephyros smiled, an expression that still felt strange on his face. "Approve their request. And Crix?" "Yes." "Director, make sure they understand that their new mission is not to impose peace. It's to protect the right of others to choose peace for themselves." As Crix left, Zephyros looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them was a small blue world called Earth, where beings he had once dismissed as primitive had taught an entire galaxy the difference between power and strength. General Vorthak had been right to warn against attacking humanity, not because humans were militarily superior, but because they carried something far more dangerous than weapons, an idea that freedom was the birthright of every thinking being. And ideas, as the former emperor had learned, were the most powerful force in the universe.